For hundreds of great shows like this one, go to onnetworks.com.
Now, if you want to be in the video game business from like the late 80s to the late 90s, you need one thing. You need a killer mascot.
A mascot game was kind of a company's flagship product, and they would work very hard on it, and there wasn't a company or a console that wasn't making these types of games.
If a company has created a mascot that is just, world famous, Mario for example, now you have a built-in celebrity endorsement. People reference it in pop culture, you'll see it pop up in maybe a music video, you'll see it pop up in the news. So building up a mascot was another way for gaming companies to get their message out there without spending dollar for dollar on advertising.
And unlike a real-life celebrity, a video game mascot is not going to want to renegotiate his contract, he's not going to refuse to do a fast food promo, and you're not going to find him in a sleazy hotel with a dead hooker and a pile of coke.
Pac-Man was probably the first video game mascot, because before that, there were no recognizable characters for games. It was, you're a ship, you're a guy, you're a car. It was never that you were a person with a name that can be synonymous with a company.
So Namco made Pac-Man in 1980, and it was originally called Puck-Man, but they changed the name when they brought it over to the United States because they were worried that vandals would change the P to F and get Man. Hey, this is my favorite game, Man. Man, that's a great game.
Because video gaming was so new in America, when you saw the image of Pac-Man, it was the mascot for all video games. So Pac-Man wasn't as easily identifiable with the company that made it. But the concept was there for a mascot. And you saw it because Pac-Man was known by everybody at the time.
The very next year after Pac-Man, we had a whole new revolution in gaming mascots. We got a 2-for-1 deal with Donkey Kong. We had not only the title character Donkey Kong, the big gorilla, you also had Mario.
Donkey Kong is one of Nintendo's first mascots, and he really evolves as a character. In Donkey Kong 1, he's the villain. In Donkey Kong Jr., he's the victim. In Donkey Kong 3, he goes back to villain. But by the time they make Donkey Kong Country, the character has become so popular, there's no way they can do anything but make him the hero. And he becomes this lovable ape in a tie, and he becomes a mascot character.
He's got to be this stuffed animal you could take to bed with you, or, the guy you could put in your lunchbox. This lovable character that really opens up the door for licensing opportunities.
Even more so than Donkey Kong, Mario actually became the key video game mascot to come out of that game.
Mario is this instantly recognizable icon. You see him, you're like, Mario, Nintendo. But it's so funny because the reason why Mario looks the way Mario does is because of technical limitations.
They gave him a hat because it was too hard to do hair. They gave him a mustache because it was too hard to do a mouth. They gave him a big nose because they hate Italians.
Mario has overalls on because the overalls could be different color than his arms, so you can see the arms move.
And the name Mario actually comes from the landlord of the building that Nintendo of America was housed in back then. They thought this kindly old Italian guy kind of looked like their character and said, that guy's name is Mario? Our guy's name is going to be Mario.
Mario and Luigi basically initiated a Cold War among game makers to create the most lovable mascot that game players would identify with your company. And that led to a bunch of fun
things like Ubisoft having Rayman, Hudson Soft with Bomberman, Capcom has Mega Man. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Sega started out with Alex Kidd, kind of a weird monkey boy kind of guy, and they put him in like half a dozen games or so, but he never really took off.
And then the heads up at Sega were like, this doesn't work. We gotta come up with a new mascot.
And they came up with Sonic the Hedgehog, the Pepsi to Mario's Coke. Hence was born a legend.
Mario kind of grew organically into the icon he was. Sonic, on the other hand, was very deliberately designed from the get-go to be as popular as possible.
They just put together all the different elements they thought would be successful with the kids, and they made him blue, they made him edgy, they made him kind of wacky, they made him sort of anti-authoritarian, but still in a very sort of safe, controlled, corporate kind of way.
If you look at Mario, you might not think he was made in the early 80s, but if you look at Sonic, there is no question what era that guy came from. He reeks of the mid-90s. He's got a very extreme attitude. He's very cool and radical. A lot of parents wouldn't let their kids play Sonic because it was too extreme, and it was so radical they were afraid that he was going to overthrow the government.
But the game was good. That's the key. If the game is good, the mascot can take off organically. And they put him out and released him, and because the game was good, Sonic took off.
The original Sonic games are so classic that even though there hasn't been a good one in over a decade, people still talk about the character and still await his new releases. That's how good the 16-bit Sonic games were.
So the other company that was competing against Sega and Nintendo was TurboGrafx-16. Their mascot was Bonk.
Instead of jumping on people like Mario or being very fast like Sonic, he's got this enormous noggin and he hits things with it, and it's actually a really good game.
So TurboGrafx-16, seeing the success of the edgy, cool character Sonic the Hedgehog that Sega released, decided, you know what? We're gonna go that route too.
They took Bonk and they sent him into the future where he became a hip, radical, extreme cyborg named Zonk.
So what Sonic did was basically open the door for all these companies to introduce mascots that were cool, hip, edgy, and or furry animals.
Atari had a sub-company called Tengen, and they had Awesome Possum.
Awesome Possum. Wonderful. Just a wonderful carbon copy of Sonic the Hedgehog.
We get Awesome Possum. We get Sparkster the Rocket Knight. He's I believe a hamster or a possum in like a knight uniform with a rocket pack.
Then a company called IRM tried Rocky Rodent. He was like a hip, cool rodent who took his different hairstyles and threw them at bad guys.
Sunsoft has Arrow the Acrobat, who eventually they spin off into Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel.
Then there's Bubsy the Bobcat, who was had this exclamation point on his shirt. That's how extreme he was. Even his shirt was yelling at you.
So Bubsy actually held his own for a little while until Bubsy 3D came out, widely considered one of the worst games ever. Even a decent mascot cannot survive a terrible game.
And these games were just a dime a dozen. Everyone had to try to get one out there. Even the good ones are getting lost in the shuffle. There's just so many of them. Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, that was a thing. That one sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Possibly the only goofy mascot from that era besides Sonic that's still around is Kirby.
It seems like the most generic of game mascots. I mean, you just have a cute pink bubble that eats things. Yet for some reason, Kirby's still an active player and one of Nintendo's biggest characters.
So after Sonic, the only one to kind of really stand out in this extreme furry animal brigade was Crash Bandicoot.
What I like about Crash Bandicoot is that he doesn't have attitude. He's just kind of crazy. Like he just kind of looks off kilter. Like he could turn on you at any minute. That's what I liked about him.
Crash Bandicoot did well because he had good games. Crash Bandicoot was pretty much the Mario of the PlayStation.
You know it's a good mascot when he gets a kart racing game. And Crash got a great kart racing game.
But then he kind of lost his mascot status because eventually his game started showing up on all the different systems.
Games on the GameCube, games on the Xbox. So he went from mascot status to basically a well-known game character status.
Now the same thing that happened to Crash actually happened to another character called Zool years earlier. Commodore was going to use Zool as a cute little ninja on their Commodore Amiga.
And the problem with Zool is that Commodore didn't own him. So just like Crash Bandicoot, they started licensing him off to other systems, which, makes good business, but doesn't make a good mascot.
It makes a lot of sense why video game companies gravitated toward easy, colorful, cartoonish mascots. And the primary reason for that were the graphical limitations at the beginning of games.
Since the level of realism is a lot better in games now, you don't have to use a pixel for Mario's mustache. You can make a real mustache where the hair actually waves as you're running into the wind, so there's no reason to do these cartoony figures anymore.
It used to be that all you could get was cartoon characters. Now we have the technology where you can make people that really look like people.
By the end of the 90s, the great mascot race kind of ground to a halt. What happened was, as gamers were getting older, they wanted more mature, more complex, more involved games, and a little furry animal just wasn't cutting it anymore.
The consoles were marketed at an older and older audience. Nintendo was kind of a child's toy, whereas PlayStation 3 is a legit high-end adult gizmo with, very confusing media features.
So the only mascot that's kind of survived recently is Pikachu from the Pokemon series, and really, if you look at it, that game is also just for kids.
Out of all these mascots, Mario is really the only one who's been around from the very beginning. Now, why is that? It's because he's like Tony Bennett. He doesn't try to change with the times, and that's why we still love Mario today.
Mario is a lot like Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse can have a cartoon that takes place in the 1400s, then another one that takes place present-day Christmas time. In the same way, Mario can play tennis one game, save the princess in another, and then race in another. He can be a boxing ref. He kind of fits into all these things.
Unlike some of these other characters, which are just front-loaded with too much attitude and too much backstory, and then they just don't fit.
Sonic is still alive. Pokemon, Kirby, obviously the Mario series proves that Established mascots can still live, but companies' willingness to engage in the space in that way has not been the same.
The mascot fad was just that. It was a fad. And it's over. But, like most fads, it was fun while it lasted. R.I.P. mascots. R.I.P.
For hundreds of great shows like this one, go to onnetworks.com.